Welcome to Red and Yellow, the podcast about all things to do with refereeing at grassroots level, looking at the laws of football, speaking to guests, and trying to help you become a better referee, with Adam Humphreys and me, Ed Connell.
Hello, loyal listeners. It's Adam here, and I just wanted to get in early on this episode of Red or Yellow to remind you to please send in your questions about refereeing or anything you feel like you might need help with in terms of your game. That's why we are here, to help you improve to be a better referee. We really enjoy getting questions from our listeners as voice notes via email or DM or on social media. Being able to help you is why we created this podcast, and to offer our insights and to be able to help you by drawing on our experience. Added to that, if you are a very fit listener, then please don't forget to follow us on all the social medias. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. As well as remember to like and subscribe in your podcast feed. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get on with the show. Well, hello, Edward.
Hello, Adam. How are you?
I'm bloody exhausted, but I'm okay. How are you?
Hey, why are you so tired?
It's just been a big week, Mr. Connell. Been a big week. I was performing last weekend, and then in Brisbane, then down to the Gold Coast for a game on the Gold Coast, then home. Didn't get home till about 10 p.m. Then, full week at work, game on Wednesday. And then I've got 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow.
And how long is your acting gig going to last for?
I think I have an indefinite position as Basil Forte.
Does that mean it's going to just keep on going?
Hopefully. It's quite nice being able to perform every so often. Yeah, it fits into my life quite well, which is good. But it does mean I have time away from football, which is a shame. But that's okay.
That's all
because
right.
obviously football is a season. So yeah. No, it's cool. It's good. It's good. What about you? What have you been up to?
Just the usual, really. Work. And I'm on a bit of a fitness drive at the moment. So
Good man. Is that after reading my blog about fitness for referees?
It's not after reading your blog.
Thanks.
It's after deciding.
I'll tee you up, Adam, and then I'm going to punch you in the face.
It's just after deciding that, I need to get a bit healthier. So I've been eating very healthily. Haven't been drinking alcohol, and I've been doing lots of exercise, and it's paying off. I've lost a bit of weight, and
nice.
So that's all good.
I suppose it might be worth giving some context to this conversation, because that's how we know each other, isn't it? You were originally a client of mine as a personal trainer.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So I'm glad you've got back on the on that part of your life. Is there anything you want to discuss with me? You got any questions about it?
No, because I'm one of these people that if I decide to do something or buy something or go somewhere, I kind of research it within an inch of its life. So I know all the things I need to do, and it's just putting them in place, which I'm doing at the moment. And it's all going okay.
Nice. So that's really nice to hear. I'm glad you're doing that for yourself. Good.
I did think about you though yesterday, because I was sort of thinking about.
I mean, I think about
you. I was just thinking about how when we first met, I was going through that period of my life when I was sort of pretty motivated in terms of fitness, and it's quite good to sort of have that same motivation at the moment.
Good.
But not have someone sort of help me through it as you were back then. But it's all good.
I miss jumping on the train and coming all the way to like the hour and a half, 2 hour journey I had to do to get to your flat in London.
I think you'll find, Adam, that you did that about twice.
No, I did that more than twice.
For all the other sessions, I had to venture out into deepest, darkest Essex to come and meet you at some place. You did that trip out here like 2 times.
That is not true. That is such a fallacy. I did it plenty more than twice. We did it. I remember doing it when we went swimming with your friend David.
Yeah.
I remember doing it when we both wore red t-shirts and blue shorts, and we got that photo.
That was actually at the Virgin.
The same day.
In Essex.
Was it? No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure people don't want to hear about all this.
I miss training you.
It's fun.
I think the history of our relationship is probably more important to this podcast than what we're here to actually do. Good. That's cool. Well, I'm glad you're figuring all that out. And just on that, you mentioned motivation. Just remember,
Yeah.
motivation isn't the thing you need to get fit. You need action, then you need to track your results, and then you'll get motivated. Once you see the results, that's where motivation comes from. So don't start with motivation. Anyone listening to this, start with action. That's what I wanted to
I'm
say.
not sure I agree with that, because if you have to wait for the results before you get motivated, you don't get there. So you've got to be motivated to start with. Otherwise, the ball doesn't get rolling.
It's kind of a circle, but
It is a circle.
psychology is on my side in this one. And you're right. You obviously have to have the initial spark in order to take the
Yeah.
action. But it's a bit like a bus waiting for motivation. You can take years and years and years waiting for it, and then like it will come in like two will come at once almost. But really, if you're kind of struggling, the easiest way to get motivated is to do something to begin with.
The difficult thing I find is that it's just a lot of what you need to do to be healthier and to lose weight is quite incompatible with having a sort of social life. I know you're going to probably disagree with me, but that's reality.
No, I don't disagree at all. You mean it's incompatible with your love for red wine?
No, it's incompatible with my love for red wine. It's incompatible with my love for eating out at restaurants. I mean, it's very easy to get fitter, healthier, and lose weight if you are in total control of what you are eating and doing.
Not agree more.
So if you're sort of at home and you're choosing what to cook for your dinner, and you're choosing at the supermarket whether to buy alcohol or not buy alcohol, and whether to buy sweet things or not buy sweet things, it's very easy, I find, to get yourself into a calorie deficit and get healthier. But if you go out to restaurants where you kind of can't always sort of choose the food you'd ideally want to eat and control those things, it's tough, and it's mentally it's a challenge, because you can't live forever at home as a hermit. At some point you've got to go back out there and lead normal life again, and it's just getting your head around that balance. But it's not straightforward. It's not easy.
No, it's not. I completely agree. And if anyone wants to ask me any questions to that end, then feel free to send them in.
Yeah.
But I love helping people in that sense. But you are right. It is hard. It's and not just that. It's hard if you're a parent. It's hard when you have a really busy, demanding job like you do. It's hard if you work on sociable hours like nurses and doctors. It's hard if, like fitness is, and this is my core message as a personal trainer, is fitness isn't accessible to everybody in the same way. So for every human being you come across, you have to find a way of designing a specific way of them being able to fit fitness into their life. And by doing that, then hopefully they will just make the changes they need. But so many people have this objective view. I was having this conversation the other day, actually. So many people have this objective view of what fitness is. Like, you are only fit if you look a certain way. You are only fit if you are able to lift a certain amount of weight. You are only fit if, etc., etc. And that's just not true. There's no objective standard of fitness. The only objective standard of fitness is the one that you feel like you can work towards within the context of your life. I have a chronic heart condition or congenital heart condition. I can't get as fit as Mo Farah no matter what I do. I could be on the exact same training plan as he is. I will never get there for many reasons. One, genetically I'm different, but two, I have a heart condition. That's it. That defines how fit I can possibly get. Your, age, other aspects of your life, your heritage and everything else plays in a massive aspect of your ability to get fit. So you have to make sure you're not living up to somebody else's standard of fitness. You just live up to your own standard of fitness. And that also, when you realize that really helps motivation as well, because you don't constantly feel like you're failing. You're on the treadmill of failure because all you're doing is comparing yourself to others. You're actually looking at yourself and looking after yourself and noticing the wins within yourself, which sounds like to me that's what you're doing, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I've had these episodes of my life before where I know I can do it if I sort of set my mind to it. But as I say, it's not without its difficulties.
Well, but you're a very successful man, Edward, and you're a very determined man. And if you can lend some of that from your personal life and your professional life, into your fitness life, then that will of course help you go forward.
It will. Anyway, enough of my sort of fitness drive at the moment. Should we talk about news?
We should, because there was quite a big one that I think we're probably going to start with, and we haven't even planned this. Let's see if we're on the same page.
No, I should admit that I've just told Adam before he came on air to record that I normally sort of do a lot of prep for these recordings, and then tonight I was working and I completely forgot that we were meant to be recording until Adam messaged me and said we're on in 15.
Also, you know, don't put yourself above my standard. I do a lot of prep for these things as well.
See, it's good to have some comedy in these podcasts.
So what news
anybody that's listened to us before knows, Adam, you don't do any prep. And for people who've just heard me say I haven't done much prep for this episode and now probably panicking about where the hell this episode's going. But anyway.
Into the gutter. No. So what news? What news are we going to start with?
Well, I would quite like to start with the Fulham Man United
Absolutely right.
game.
Aleksander Mitrovic.
And because that game's obviously happened since we last recorded, and for those people that don't necessarily follow UK football, this was the FA Cup game between Fulham.
Final?
No, I think it's like
quarters.
Yeah, quarterfinals. And Fulham were 1-0 up. I think it was at Old Trafford, wasn't it? I can't recall. But anyway,
yeah, I think it was.
1-0 up.
Theatre of Dreams.
Coming up towards the end of the first half, and I think most people would have been a bit surprised that Fulham were leading. And then the wheels quite literally came off in the space of about 40 seconds. And what's of most interest, obviously, to our podcast is Mitrovic. So just sort of to recap for people that haven't watched it, and if you haven't watched it, perhaps go watch it on YouTube. But Man United player shoots, and then Willian gives the impression by his actions that he says he's chested the ball off the line. But obviously, a lot of the Man U players are sort of
saw the handball,
and so goes to VAR. Referee goes over and looks at it, and it quite clearly is a
handball on the goal line.
Handball on the
which,
goal line.
As we know, results in a
red card
because it's a
denying obviously goal scoring opportunity.
There we go. Oh, that took a while.
And I'm wondering there's some sort of trick question there. And so it's a penalty. And the referee comes back and he shows the red card to Willian. No complaints there. It was an obvious red card. It was an obvious handball. But
no complaints. No complaints to everybody who understands football. But to Fulham, there was a numerous amount of complaints, wasn't there?
Yeah. So I haven't found out yet. And haven't been able to glean from the media reporting what caused the manager to get his red card. I can only assume he was up in arms about the idea that it was a penalty and he didn't think it was a red card.
Oh, do you know what order in which it happened? Because my understanding of it was Willian's red card first, Aleksander Mitrovic's red card, and then it was who's the manager? Not Navas.
Is it Silva? No, not Silva. Is it?
Is it the ex-Watford guy? I can't remember. And then he got his red card.
It was Silva. Marco Silva.
I think he got his red card because he was so angry that Mitrovic got sent off. He was taken out on the fourth official, and then I think it was Chris Kavanagh, the referee. He goes over to dismiss him. So I think it was the Aleksander Mitrovic red card that sent Carlos Silva over the edge. I don't think it was the Willian red card. But I don't know. I can't remember.
I think from what I read, Silva threw a water bottle at the fourth official, which is what prompted his. But I don't know in the order which it came. Anyway, there can be, from a refereeing point of view, no complaints at all about Willian's red card. Very clear.
Completely agree.
And if Silva did throw a bottle, he
deserves to go.
That's him off as well. But Mitrovic, who is a bit of a tempestuous player, he's sort of quite an emotional player on the pitch. I can't work out for my part, from having watched footage a few times, as to whether or not the referee gives him a red card for something he says before he gets pushed. But what's quite plain here is Mitrovic goes to referee, he argues with him, there's obviously exchange of words, and then Mitrovic also pushes the referee. Not the heaviest of pushes.
It's not. He kind of sort of grabs his arm, doesn't he, and tries to just hold him back a little bit, because I think Chris was walking away from him and he's tried to just restrict. He's kind of tried to restrict Chris's movement. Like, I think is kind of the best way of saying it. It's not like a massive push in the chest and Chris has fallen over and think it's nothing like what Roy Keane did to Andy D'Urso all those years ago. But he physically touched the referee.
It's hands on the referee, and that's all you need. But interesting, as I say, I don't know whether I couldn't work out whether or not the red comes before the push or not, because
I think it was the hand that caused the red. I'll be honest.
Because as Mitrovic is talking to him, he's showing a red card, which I'm assuming is he's showing that to Willian. And then the push comes, but because the way it looks on TV, I wasn't sure whether or not it was because Mitrovic had said something. But so Mitrovic has obviously got his red card. Now I don't know if this has been ultimately resolved by the FA as to what the sanction is going to be. I don't think it has yet, has it?
I don't think it has.
But it's prompted this huge debate about, what should be the consequence of hands on the referee.
10-game ban is what I've seen banded around.
Yeah, so I'm quite encouraged to hear that a lot of people on social media, and obviously my social media is perhaps biased towards sort of referees that I follow and the referee communities that I follow, but a lot of people sort of say, this is an opportunity to make an example of him. And interestingly, I think it was Henry Winter who writes for the Times.
Yeah, he does. He's great.
I think, he's excellent. And I don't know if he actually sort of said it should be X number of matches banned, but what he did say is this is an opportunity for them to make a point about, there is a real problem within the game in terms of violence and threats towards referees. It's putting off young people joining the game, blah, 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 blah. And this is a golden opportunity for the FA to make a stand and make a point. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. What would you like to see happen?
I don't really know. Like, part of me feels like it's a great opportunity, and the FA are wonderful at missing great opportunities. So there's that aspect of it. What would I like to see happen? To call it violent conduct, put it this way: if he did that to a player, I think we'd think nothing of it. It might result in 2 yellows, right?
Yeah.
But the fact he's done it to the official, it's worse. And I agree totally that we shouldn't be encouraging violence towards referees. We shouldn't be encouraging any kind of physical contact or physical intimidation to referees. Like, just the other day, I had to put in an incident report because, a verbal intimidation sent my way by a player after I sent him off. And I think, I don't know what I want to happen to him other than the fact that he needs to be banned. It needs to be shown that he can't do that. I think what I'd really prefer, I don't think a footballing ban solves the problem as much as actually a behavioral consult with him, or send him into some kind of course to be like, mate, you can't do this to referees, or send him out on the freaking pitch, give him a ban, make him grab a whistle, make him learn how to be a referee, and go and show him how fucking hard it is. I don't know, I feel like it needs a different approach to just 9 months. I've seen people talking about Eric Cantona, and with Eric Cantona, when he drop kicked that Crystal Palace supporter, he got 9-month ban, didn't he? Which again, you're kicking a fan. I love Eric Cantona. I was a huge Man U fan when it happened, and I thought 9 months was ridiculous amount of time, but now as an adult, as a human in the world, he should never have played football again. And it's hard because I can't call it violent conduct on the referee. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he's punched him, it's not like he's pushed him, but he has laid hands on him, he has pulled him to one side, and that is wrong. It should not happen, and therefore I don't think you need to make an example of him. I don't think framing it as in we're going to make an example of Aleksander Mitrovic is the right way forward. I think what we need to do, the right way forward here, is to say, actually, we're going to make an example of this behavior, full stop. It's got nothing to do with Aleksander. It's got everything to do with the way people think they can intimidate referees. And that is what is wrong here. And I would love for the FA to go, this has nothing to do with Aleksander Mitrovic or the fact that it was in an FA Cup semi-final, quarter-final, whatever it might have been. This is about the wider footballing community. We want to make a stand against any kind of behavior, against any sort of referee. And therefore, we are sanctioning this in this way for these reasons. And this will now be the sanction across the country if anything like this ever gets reported.
But you can't say that and then not ask the FA to make an example of him, because the only way in which this becomes a learning point for all levels of the game is to deliver very serious sanctions. If you do anything other than give him a very serious sanction, the message that comes away from this is...
I completely agree.
You can lay hands on the match officials and you only get like a 2 or 3 match ban. That, for me, would be a real missed opportunity here.
I completely agree.
This is an opportunity for the FA to say, this is totally unacceptable. We've got a growing problem in the game at all levels. Anybody that lays hands on the referee or match officials has to expect the most severe sanctions. And I think he should be getting, okay, whether it be months ban or
end of the
significant
season
number of matches, it's got to be something which makes people sit back and think,
whoa,
wow,
I agree.
You just can't do that.
But where is that line drawn? Like, let's say the FA, and this is my issue with it. This is why I kind of like a couple of things. One, I also don't think, even if the FA do come down hard on him, I don't think that message will reverberate through football throughout the fields of the country, because I just don't think the football community are that sensitive to it. That what will happen is they'll just turn around and go, well, the FA have overblown that, flipping FA this, FA that. In the same way, we all blame the government for our problems, as opposed to, like kind of taking responsibility for it. Like, I think the FA, if they go really hard, they're damned if they do, even though they should, and I hope they will. And I think they're damned if they don't, for the reasons you've outlined. Like, ban him for 2 seasons, ban him for 3 seasons, give him a £1 million fine to charity, whatever it might be. However hard the sanction might be, you're always going to have pockets of society going, that was too much. He's only laid his hands on a referee. But us as referees are always going to sit there and go, it doesn't matter what they do. It's not going to be good enough.
But I do think you're wrong, because I think if you deliver very serious punishment for this, I do think the message goes out, because Premiership football is such a hugely watched sport all around the world, that if you get a situation like that, which wasn't, as you say, the most serious, it wasn't a punch, it was a sort of basically grabbing him and pulling him back. But if for even that simple action, the message goes out about any contact with the referee means you get, very heavily punished, then your local player playing on the park on a Sunday morning will understand, if they put hands on the referee, they know what happened in the Premiership, and they understand if, they get very serious penalties themselves. The danger is, I think the real danger here is, if you do anything other than give the most severe sanction here, you basically give everybody the carte blanche to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree
in
with
the
that.
foreknowledge that you're not going to get badly punished if you do it.
Maybe I've
No,
just lost faith. Maybe I've just lost faith in the footballing community to respond to something, like to understand that the lesson is being dealt to everybody. Sometimes I feel like with football, it's like the Premier League and us. And what is dealt with in the Premier League is a Premier League matter. And then the rest of the footballing community has to deal with it. Like, we've all seen examples this season of much severe physical abuse at grassroots level on these referees. And the problem just seems to be getting worse. And I think that's my issue here. I don't think this Aleksander Mitrovic thing, however it's dealt with, will cure the problem. I think it can help build a narrative to help cure the problem. But I don't think we need to look at this incident as it will cure the problem, because I think the problem is greater than Aleksander Mitrovic. Now, if it was Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi or Harry Kane, then I think there might be a stronger feeling, or maybe we need to be a bit more strict here. Like, maybe that might help change the narrative a little bit more. But everyone's kind of going, it's Aleksander Mitrovic, what do you expect? And it's Fulham, who kind of cares, other than Fulham fans? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that's just my subjective view on it, but I think I'm just beleaguered at this point.
Listen, you can still be beleaguered with the way the FA behave, but that shouldn't affect your gut feeling as to what should happen. And I think my gut feeling is, you talked about that Paolo Di Canio incident where he pushed over the ref.
Yeah.
I mean, he got an 11 match ban,
Mm.
and I
Yeah,
don't see any
I don't
reason
think
why
that's enough.
Mitrovic. No, I agree with you, but I don't see any reason why Mitrovic should get any less than that.
No.
But it's interesting because this followed on not long after. I don't know whether you were watching the Liverpool Man U game that took place probably about a week or two before that, where Liverpool beat Man U 7-0, right?
Yeah.
That was the big
7-1, I thought, yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
That was the big storyline. But what you may or may not have seen is there was a point in that game where Fernandes, who when you were watching the game, Fernandes he'd lost his head. There's no two ways about it. He was behaving irrationally on the pitch, and all the listening to the commentary teams, they're saying all these players lost their heads, but Fernandes especially. And there came a point when he pushed the assistant. Now I don't know whether you saw that.
Did he?
But yeah, so the ball went out of play, and Fernandes pushes the assistant. And I was watching that live, and my immediate thought was, "Wow, that's really, really serious. That should be dealt with. Almost certainly got to be a red card." And no action was taken. And
by the referee.
By the referee, yeah. And no action was taken retrospectively either, which was even more disappointing.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Because for me, if the referee misses it, that's one thing. But I was really annoyed about that, watching, a really high-profile game, probably one of the most watched matches of the season, and a player puts hands on an assistant, and there was no consequence at all. And that, I mean, I just think that's such a terrible message when people, and I've said this before, I keep saying, people watch what goes on in the Premiership, and when they see how you can behave in the Premiership by swearing at referees and giving abuse and getting in the face of an assistant, screaming at them, and there's no consequence.
Nope.
Everybody understands, well, if it's that you can do that sort of thing. It replicates itself on a Sunday morning. Exactly. And I just can't understand why there was no, there were no consequences for him.
There was also no media coverage of it.
There wasn't that. I mean, there was in the papers. There was a bit of stuff in the papers afterwards,
right.
But not much in terms of the commentary watching it live. I mean, no one had the reaction that I had from the perspective of an official, along the lines of how on earth that just gone, and not been dealt with.
Yeah.
And there were some articles with it afterwards, but I mean, I think that is the problem when you have events like that happening, and you don't do anything about it. The lesson people take away from that is it's acceptable.
Yeah. No, I agree. Maybe as time goes on, once I see the punishment, my mind will be made clearer. I think I'm past the point of being able to have an opinion on it because I'm just so frustrated at the whole situation, full stop. I think I don't really know, but yeah. I mean, the only other thing I'd like to say about that whole incident is when you watched it back, would you say there was anything Chris Kavanagh could have done to stop that from happening to him?
What, the Mitrovic incident?
I think maybe a lot of the incident, because there's something I was watching it and I noticed this in the Premier League quite a lot actually, and I think there's maybe they don't need to do it, maybe they're told not to do it at that level, I don't know, but definitely at the grassroots level, there's something you can definitely do, and I was talking about this with my assistant just on Wednesday, like what you can do in order to make sure that if someone is going to do something like that to you, like you've built the case even bigger for what is about to occur. And I noticed, I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at?
No, go on.
Okay. Well, I think Chris, I can't say he put himself in danger. That's not fair because he's a referee. He shouldn't be in danger, full stop, right? But I don't think he took big enough evasive action when clearly things were getting very hot and there was a lot of people, like we had subs on the bench, we had all sorts, right? But he stood very close to the whole situation. And I think like when you've got a heated situation like that, the more distance you can create between the player who is clearly angry and wants to come at you and yourself, the better. So I will always back away. I walk like if I give a penalty, I'm walking towards the goal line And if anyone wants to come and talk to me about a penalty, everyone can see them walking the length of the penalty area to come and talk to me. And I think in mass cons and stuff like that, and when Mitrovic, because there's a moment where Mitrovic is like on his shoulder, screaming and shouting at him, Chris should have run away. I personally, maybe Chris shouldn't have. I don't want to dig him out, but if it was me, I'd have accelerated away. I'd have turned around, walked backwards, kept walking backwards, and kept going, you're going to keep coming at me? You're going to keep coming at me? Fine. Here's a red card. And I'd given it to him before he was even able to close that distance.
See, I totally disagree with that, because he comes from looking at the VAR screen, right? And he's walking back towards where everybody's congregated in the penalty area, right? So all Kavanagh is doing is coming from the VAR screen back to deal with the incident he's just watched, which is penalty, red card, and he was doing nothing wrong at that point. He's just walking back to where, and you're almost trying to excuse people's conduct.
No, I'm not at all. I'm honestly not. Like, and maybe this is just a bad example, but I did watch it and I noticed, I'm like, why is there not more space between him and the players? Like, if it was me out there, I'd call Willian over to me. I wouldn't walk to him, right? If it was me, I would back away. Like, I brought up the Andy D'Urso, and I talk about this a lot because I know Andy. I knew Andy, and when Roy Keane, he gave a penalty against Man United at Old Trafford. I think it was against Ipswich or something, and like Roy Keane chased him off the field, and Andy was running backwards the whole time until he fell over a billboard, right? And when you watch that, although it diminishes the power of the referee, it shows how overly aggressive the player is being. And Andy did everything right, like tried to run away. I'm not saying Chris didn't, but I think at grassroots, if something like that was happening to me, I would run away. I would just create so much distance so that everyone in the field can see that guy is the problem. I'm not closing the space to him. I'm not going towards him in order to not expose myself to it, but I'm giving him space and distance to calm down. And I'm also watching him so that I can build the biggest case I need for what sanction I need to take on him. And I agree, in the Premier League, there's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more fans. Sometimes you have to get closer to talk to people and stuff like that. It's a lot easier at our level. But I think as a learning point for everybody on this, when you have an irate player, the more distance you can create between them to help them calm down before you then have to talk to them and sanction them, I think is a good policy to adopt.
See, I think in you saying that, you almost attribute a degree of blame, whether you think you are or not.
To Chris.
You almost sort of, I think he did absolutely nothing wrong. If a player is unhappy with a refereeing decision to the extent that he first of all verbally remonstrates with him, he's perfectly entitled to do that if he can do it with a reasonable
degree of respect. Yeah.
But the second you put hands on somebody,
no, I agree. I'm not excusing putting hands on a referee. I'm not excusing that at all. And it doesn't matter where the referee is. That should not be occurring. That just should not be occurring. But you can't give players that much. You can't expect players to not act in the most foul way sometimes, because they do. And we've all experienced that. And therefore, you have to have tools in your toolkit in order to be able to manage that. Now, in the Premier League, you shouldn't have to worry about that. I completely agree. He should be able to walk onto that pitch as a professional match official and not think his safety should ever be in danger. But you know as well as I know, at grassroots level, we're not afforded that same safety. We're not afforded the safety of cameras, the safety of police, the safety of security guards, right? And therefore, on a grassroots level, if you're watching that situation in that FA Cup semi-quarterfinal, then I think when I was watching it, there was a moment where I was like, at that point, I would have evaded. I would have run away. I'm not saying Chris had to, but if it was me on a grassroots in a similar situation, I would have.
But just ask yourself the question, right? Why are you saying the referee
has to run away?
Have to run away from a player who's behaving in an appropriate way? Why is it the referee's responsibility, putting aside issues of safety, right, which don't really exist in the Premiership? But why are you attributing some responsibility on the referee to have to remove himself from a situation? You're right at the grassroots. You award a penalty. There's a lot of people remonstrating, and you can walk over to the touchline, keep yourself away from the situation. and then appeal come towards you, then that's them sort of acting in a sort of inappropriate way. But all he was doing was coming back on after delay of going to the VR screen, heading back to award a penalty. Right?
And I agree with you in this situation. I agree with you in this situation. I just think.
But you're saying that he should have done, could have run away from it, as though, but by actually saying that, you are attributing some blame to him. And I think that Mitrovic was 100% out of order. I don't even think it's acceptable to verbally remonstrate the way that he did, because I think once the decision's been made, these people are professionals. They know that you can go and scream whatever you like at the referee. They're not changing their decision.
Yeah,
the decision's been made at that point. And so actually to remonstrate them verbally at that point, I think it's inappropriate and wrong. And I don't think you can say that Chris Kavanagh did anything wrong in that situation. And the only person at fault is the player.
No, I know. I do agree, and I do understand that. Here's a but I just feel like there are things that we can do that can help us a bit more in those situations. Mitrovic was going to get a red card no matter what happened. Whether he put a hand on him or not, he was going to get a red card. And you're right, Chris came back onto the pitch. He was just walking across the pitch. He had no right to worry about anything like that, and he shouldn't have had to have dealt with that at all. But I just think it's great practice as a referee on the grassroots field to keep distance when temperatures are high.
I completely agree with that.
Good. But that's all I'm saying. As a point, like, and this is the issue we have, right? When comparing refereeing at that level to refereeing at our level, there are different rules you have to. There are different techniques you have to put in place.
But those techniques at grassroots are to protect yourself, right? That's a very practical observation. But a Premiership referee should not have to take those steps.
I completely agree. But it's not just to protect yourself. It's so that it aids your match control so much more as well, because you're building a physical story that the benches can see, that the fans can see. And by being in charge of you're almost puppeteering the players around the field so that everyone can understand why you've done what you've done, because everyone's seen that player walk 30 yards towards you, screaming his head off. And then by doing that, the guy is just walking into the card you're about to give him. And just think about just building that storyline physically a little bit more. Maybe it's the actor inside of me and I see things that way. I don't know. But I think that can help.
The points you're making, as I've said, are perfectly legitimate for grassroots.
Yes.
The grassroots,
I agree.
You withdraw the situation, you let players come towards you, then it's obvious everybody watching the sidelines and they come looking for problems. But this is not grassroots.
Didn't need to do that. No, I agree.
Need to do that.
I agree. I completely agree. And there is nothing that Chris did not need to do anything. I was watching it thinking, what would I do in that situation? And this would be the one thing I would change personally if that happened to me on the pitch. And that's my point. And do I think Chris did anything wrong? Not at all. He had every right to do exactly what he did, how he did, because he's a professional match official and he should be treated thus. Does it still sound like I think Chris should have got punched in the head?
No, it's not punched in the head, but you do, by how you express yourself, suggested that he bore some responsibility for what happened.
Not at all. Not at all.
There was only one person responsible for what happened.
Aleksander Mitrovic.
Exactly.
Well, really, it was Willian, because he caused the whole kerfuffle in the first place. But still, I mean, that was a footballing incident as well, and there's no blame here on Willian at all. He was just playing football, and that's fine.
He was just playing football, but he did sort of try, as footballers so frequently do, which is try and con the referee into thinking that it just come off his chest and he hadn't moved his arm at all, which he quite obviously had done. But
I feel like this debate will rage. But should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on, because I think that's enough.
Questions.
Yes, that's enough on the news, although there have been other news items. But yeah, let's go to our post bag.
So we
did have a question about contact the referees in our post bag. Did you see?
No, I didn't. I didn't see that. Do you want to?
Yeah,
I put up on Instagram, didn't I? Like, any questions, and we had a few come in there. And we had some good ones.
Karwan Ramazan. So we need to answer this now. But his question was, What do you do if a player pushes you in the chest? And well, there we go. Adam would say the
Run
referee
away.
should take a good long, hard look at himself because he probably brought it on himself by his conduct. I would say it's a red card. It's violent conduct. You lay a finger on the match officials, and you're off the pitch. And if you do anything other than that, then you are completely mistaken.
The second a player touches you, abandon the game. See, that at grassroots. Why did Chris not abandon the game?
Because he doesn't need to worry about it escalating because he's got millions of eyes watching him.
It's a very good point.
Security, and it doesn't have to worry about that. Whereas at the grassroots level, without all those protections, you got to think about yourself first.
I agree. Completely agree. At grassroots, anyone touches you, or if you feel unsafe in any way, shape, or form, you pick up that ball and walk off. And if you can't pick up the ball, you walk off.
Now, so interestingly, I obviously don't want to extend this, but just very quick question. In the event that a player pushes you,
which has happened to me,
do you think that's an automatic abandonment, or is it all context? So should that happen, you give the player the red card, they walk straight off, there's no problems. Can you then continue the game, or do you think once a player, you think, right, okay.
And I'll tell you why, because I think I don't know at what point that physical abuse upon you is going to affect your mental capacity to be able to manage that game and continue that game. And you'll be running on adrenaline to begin with, and then that might call into question some of the decisions you'll be working through. Then you might suddenly get overwhelmed by the whole thing, and it might collapse you. The second you are physically touched or abused in any way, shape, or form on the pitch, you stop the game, because it's not safe for the players if you're not mentally able to deal with what just happened to you, and it's not safe for you. And when you get into a situation where you can't make clear decisions because all you're doing is thinking about when you were pushed, what happened, if you could have changed it, your mind is only going to be fixated on that. You can't remain objective for the rest of the game, and therefore you have to call an end to the whole situation. I understand your point, and I suppose you could argue it's different for different people. Some people might have the mental ability to be able to deal with that, but I also think it sets, in the same way we're talking about Chris, making an example of Mitrovic for what he did. I think it sets a standard to all of the players within that team, to the club, to everybody else, that what happened was completely unacceptable. And the only people who have to deal with the consequences of that unacceptable behavior is the club, because they now have an abandoned game to deal with. I just don't think it's wise to ask referees to push through being physically abused, because you don't know mentally when that is going to affect them.
Yeah, I think for my part, I just think it kind of largely depends on context. If it's been a good-natured game,
we're disagreeing with everything today, aren't we?
I know, it's very controversial this evening. But yeah, I think if it's been a good-natured game and a single player on a frolic of their own, in the heat of the moment, does something stupid, just sort of puts hands on you, I kind of think that you can send them off, not have lost control and respect of everybody else, and still continue safely. But I think ultimately the test is, if you have even a hint that that is the beginnings of a potential escalation, then you're quite right. I think it's an abandonment of that.
I also think you can't take things for granted. And I think even if the rest of the game was done in a good spirit and all the other players are fine and it seemed like an isolated incident, I've thought that before, and I've thought players are on my side, and then, it only takes the tiniest of things, and then suddenly they're not on your side. And suddenly the thing that tips them over is now suddenly an even smaller thing that might tip them over based on the history of what's happened. And I just don't think it's wise to expose yourself to that. Plus, if something else was to happen in the game and you go, well, I was pushed, but I tried to carry on, I think all the authorities would go, why did you carry on?
Yeah, no.
You've exposed yourself to that second situation when you really didn't need to. And now we've got more issues to deal with. I think you just need to cut it off.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that fair? Cool.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Should we deal with the assessed or the observed question? I like that one.
Yeah, go for that one.
So Kean wrote into us and he said, I'm being observed this coming weekend. What should I do?
Well, I mean, you're much better placed to answer this, because I've never gone through the assessment process, although I obviously know a lot of people who have, and I've spoken to people that have been assessed and assessed others. The impression I get, and you, as I say, you'll be better placed to say, but is to try and go by the letter of the law as much as you can, and so don't sort of overlook certain things the way you might do in some games, to try and keep the game flowing, whatever. I get the impression that you're expected to do everything to the letter of the law, and so I kind of think that's the answer. But I don't know, you tell me, being someone who's been assessed.
I feel like my entire life is assessed. It's different for all people. Like different assessors have different requirements. I think, truthfully, is just relax, do your best. I think the most important thing I've noticed with assessors, and when I've seen other people get assessed and my process through it, is one, the more experience you get at being assessed, the better you get at managing that situation and that game. Two, I personally still believe in managing the game in a way that you think is right for you as a referee, and then the assessor or the observer can either agree or disagree with that. But the better observers are the ones who will open a discussion about that, ask for your understanding of what is going on there, why you did the things you did, and then they'll understand the context and then I'll offer you advice. But the key here is to only ever view working with every single individual observer as a learning experience for you. Like, I've learned something from every observation I've ever had. Ones I've agreed with, ones I've disagreed with, ones I've been very frustrated with, ones that I've absolutely adored and thought, fantastic, he's 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 understood what I did and why I did it. And he's then also offered me advice on how maybe to manage it in a different situation. He's also gone, you missed this, you missed that, you missed that. Great. Why did I miss that? Like, and the great observers are the ones who will acknowledge that something wasn't quite right, and then they'll help you figure out how to make that better next time. Rather than, it's not like, don't view it as a pass-fail test. View it as a learning experience. View it as a way in which you can get a lot of knowledge on your game, because he's there literally only watching you. He's the only person you'll ever have in your life who is only there to watch just you in order to help you. And that's really important process as well.
Do you
Be
think
polite,
that? Do you
introduce
think?
yourself. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, give your tips in a second, but do you think you change the way you referee when you know you're being assessed? I mean, do you
think
consciously think to yourself, I'm going to do anything differently during the course of this game?
I think I might be a bit stricter on like the crappier side of things. Like,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was
yeah,
trying to suggest earlier
like
on. That
I'd probably be a little bit stricter on sock tape. I'd probably be a little bit stricter on undergarments and stuff like that. Especially like when I was at level 4 in the UK, that was a massive thing. And the thing is like you fight for every single point in an assessment at that level.
yeah,
And if there's a player with the wrong sock tape, you've lost marks for no reason at all. So you're a bit stricter there. Here, in Australia, I can be a bit more relaxed about that stuff in general. Here in Australia, I don't change a thing. Like, because I'm at the point where now it doesn't matter to me anymore. Like, I love performing well. I know I can perform well. I know how and I'm at a point where the observers I have they're the right level of knowledge of the game. Like, some of the observers we have a massive like experience in the games and stuff,
yeah.
and they completely understand the gray area. So I was out, where was I was at Western Pride a couple of weeks back, and a fantastic gentleman who was an
I'm
ex.
assuming that's not some LGBTQ plus event you're
Oh,
talking
no,
about
I'm
here.
sorry. It's a western suburb of Brisbane team. Um, and this fantastic referee, there was an ex-FIFA official there watching us, and this was like my 4th game of the weekend, so I could barely run up the line. My feet were shot to pieces. And he came with and this FIFA referee came with like an ex-coach of the A League. I think he might have even been a FIFA coach. Really lovely man, really lovely man. And my first fitness test, I had a great chat with him as well. And he just said, there's a zone in refereeing, and it's the grey zone. It's not black and white. Refereeing the way in which you manage a game, the way in which you apply the laws pretty much only ever exists in that gray zone. And the issue with the gray zone is sometimes you're going to be right, sometimes you're going to be wrong. And whether you're right or wrong literally depends on the person's perspective upon which they're watching you referee. And that perspective creates that bias. But as long as you can justify what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're in that zone, and that's helping you get through the 90 minutes, then you're not wrong. You just that gray zone is where refereeing lives. And the brave referee is the referee that can confidently exist in that gray zone without it affecting match control, without it affecting your ability to manage all kinds of other things with the game. And that's the best place for you to be. And I think I'm really comfortable in that gray zone now. I don't worry about whether it's right or wrong. I worry about keeping a game balanced. I worry about managing all those individual situations in the best way I need to for whatever I experience is going on in that game. So would I change the way I referee when I'm being observed anymore? Not at all. I just enjoy the present moment, and I manage every single game in the best way it's presented to me. I never go into a game with preconceived ideas and only react to what I'm experiencing, both with player management, with the crowd, with the context of the game, with my assistants, and being able to keep all those balls in the air is really difficult, but is how I do it. So I don't change a thing anymore. I'm like, this is me. You either love me or you hate me, and I really don't care anymore. And the jeopardy out of my assessments has been really great because I'm refereeing with so much freedom, and that's a great place to be. Very difficult when you're like Kian, who's just started, and you want to impress people, you want to do well, you want to have a good game, you pray nothing goes wrong and everything else. But that's all part of the learning process. You just have to view it as a learning process, and you just have to enjoy the fact that someone's there to watch you, you're enjoying it, and they want to help you. Essentially, all observers want to help you. And they all have a different definition of how that looks. But as long as you understand that and you engage in the process with that, great. Ask questions, have a growth mindset. Like, go, well, why would you do it like that? I did it like this. I can see what you're saying, but how would that help me? Like, in some ways, you almost have to suck up to the observer sometimes as well. Like, and you have to ask for their advice. Why would they do it that way? What do you mean by that? That's a really good point. I see that. I'll try that next time. All these kinds of phrases make an observer think, I've got a guy here who's really listening to me and really wants to learn. And that's really what most observers are after. If you kind of sit there and fight with the observer the whole time, the observer is going to come away and be like, he didn't listen to a thing I said. All he's done is justify what he did and why he did it. And I'm not asking him to justify it. I can see why he did and what he did. I'm asking if he could consider the other side of the coin. And if you can show that you're willing to consider the other side of the coin, and that the other side of the coin has value in how you might be able to manage that situation again, or you might be able to adopt some of those tools into another different situation in the future, then I think you're going to have a great experience with your observer. It's not about passing or failing. It's about, like most things in life, it's about engaging in order to protect your future self. It's about developing and learning and understanding. And if you go into it with a pass-fail mindset, you're more likely to fail because you're not opening yourself up to the whole gamut of experience that might be in front of you and what might happen in the future. There's lessons I've learned. Like my very first game as a level 4 referee in the UK, I was observed by a man called Mick Ewan, who is, when I tell you, he is one of the most brutal men you've ever come across. But he has such an open and warm heart. Like he was this ex-policeman born in East London, referee like for 50 years or whatever, and then he was the appointments officer for the Essex South Midlands Spartan pool thing that we created. And I got on so well with him and I had so much respect for him. My first assessment, I think he gave me like a 63, which is a really low mark. You're looking for like a 76. And the first thing he said was, you had a player clap you, why didn't you book him? And I went, I thought I could manage it. He was like, you had a player clap you, book him. He's also the kind of guy who said, if you want to get the captain's attentions or the secretary's attention when 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 you're giving your pre-match briefing to them and you're asking them to sort out the sock tape and stuff, he used to say to us, do it in your underpants, or better, do it completely naked, because then they'll look at your eyes and they'll listen to what you're saying because they want to look anywhere else. Like, he had that kind of attitude towards refereeing. I wouldn't advise you do that, but you know, I've learned that lesson. The second someone applauds me on the pitch, bang, you're getting booked. I'm not standing for that anymore. And he was completely right. And I thought I could manage my way out of it. I was trying to manage the game in the best way possible in that situation, but there's certain red lines that you just have to draw. And I learned that lesson that day. I got assessed just the other day on the Gold Coast, and it was a crazy game, you know, and I just had to manage it. And it was an assessor who I saw last year in one of my very first games here on the Gold Coast. Well, not here on the Gold Coast, I'm not in the Gold Coast now, but on the Gold Coast. He watched me in this very tight game and he gave me loads of great points. He said, you're still adapting. He went, sometimes you might need to speed things up, like talking on the move a little bit more to players, which is something I'm good at anyway. And he was like, just speed up the yellow card process sometimes. That'll really help and it will lower frustration. And then he watched me 2 weeks ago or last week, whenever it was last week. And he was like, I can't believe the jump you have made, and you have executed everything I asked you to work on when I last saw you, and the difference is immense. And you know, he gave me an incredible compliment, which meant an awful lot to me, which I won't repeat, but it was lovely. And you know, I took on his pieces of advice. I could have gone, no, this is how we do it in the UK. I like to talk to players before I book them. I think that's an important moment. And I could have kept, and I probably would have caused more problems for myself. But I listened to his advice. I leaned into his experience and I executed it. And it's paid off for me. And so you just have to be open and willing to learn. Sorry, that was quite a rant.
No, I mean, I think what puts me off the idea that, I mean, I've never really felt any need to want to progress, and that's largely because I just haven't done that much sort of um, local grassroots football in the recent past that made me think I want to sort of progress up the ladder. But what puts me off is that I don't have a difficulty with an assessor saying to me, you know, you got that law wrong, or you know, you've misunderstood a law there, or your position on the corner wasn't where it ought to have been, or your hand signals need improving in this way. Those things I can all understand because objectively they're unarguable. What I have a problem with is this whole problem that you've talked about, which is a lot of the refereeing's in that grey area, which is about, you know, personal interpretation, perception. And I find it difficult, the idea that, you know, somebody else might be trying to tell me after the game about how it should be done differently. If the assessment process is as you've described it, one which is sort of a discussion, and you know, you're open to hearing other more experienced referees give you their opinion about how things could have been maybe done differently, so that you can learn from it, then I think it's a positive thing. But my perception of it as an outsider is,
Yep.
it's kind of like an exam. There's rights or
Yep.
wrongs, and as we've said so many times in this podcast, refereeing isn't all about black and white.
No.
There's a lot of the grey.
I think maybe assessors are getting better at it. And I think the way they're being trained is getting better. Here, I did a select report, which is kind of like a report. I was an assistant and they asked me to like watch the referee, give advice, kind of do an observation on him. But obviously you can't do a full one because I'm also running the line. And I asked like Football Queensland, what how do you want me to do it? Like, and they were just like, look, just write down how you would like to be treated. And so that's what I did. And I hope it landed well. I don't know. The guy's not messaged me. Like, that's another thing as well. Like, message observer, say, thank you for the report. Say, I understand all these points. I'll work on these points. Like, think about it like creating a relationship. Think about it like they're there to mentor you. And the more you do that, the better. You know, the more human you treat them, the more human they'll treat you. And that's a very important aspect of it. You know, the greatest observers are the ones who say, you've got any issues, call me, let's discuss it, let's talk about it. They want you to learn. They're referees who've been refereeing for 30, 40, 50 years. And it means a lot to them. And what means the most to them is protecting the game. And they want you to do really well. So even though you might disagree with something they've said, they've still got a valid point because they've got all of that experience. And that experience is worth listening to, even if you disagree at the end of it, you can go, thank you for your point. I totally understand. And we'll move on from here. And I think that's all you can do. I think it's getting better. I'd like to think I've started doing assessments and stuff here, and I like to think I'd be the kind of guy who would be open discussing. Like, for instance, in my observation the other day, the observer was like, there was a handball decision, you didn't give it, you denied the penalty, and then the other team have gone down the other end and scored a goal. What happened? I went, I literally looked at him and went, I have no idea what you're talking about. He was like, what? I'm like, I have no idea what decision you're talking about. I don't remember denying a penalty. I don't remember that big an appeal. And I don't remember seeing the handball. And he went, well, when I look at your positioning on that point, there's no way you would have seen it. I was the correct side. Like, he was behind the goal line. Therefore, he was able to see it. He was like, the fact you didn't see it, the fact you don't remember, the fact you didn't think the appeal was big enough for it to be a significant decision in your mind, I completely get. I totally understand. Thanks for clarifying that. That's all I've really got to say on it. You've clarified it. You can't give what you didn't see. End of discussion. I was like, thanks. And then I went and looked at it on the video, because all my games are filmed for YouTube. And I looked at it, I went, oh, I see what you're saying. I can see the incident. Again, the video is inconclusive. I don't know if I think it hit his hip. I also think his hands are in close to his body. So if it did hit his hand, I don't think it was a handball, because I don't think it's deliberate. But the video is completely inconclusive as to where it hit him. And he went, yeah, I've just looked at it. We don't know what the answer was. You didn't give it. That's football. Off you go. And that's a really lovely way of leaving what could be a contentious decision. Now, if you've got an observer going, it was a definite handball, you've completely missed it, why did you miss it, etc., etc., and it's going to get you back up, isn't it? Really, I think the key to observers is more the observer than necessarily the referee. I think the observer has to adapt to the referee he's seeing, rather than expecting the referee to adapt to the observer that is watching. And I think that's probably my point. It just took me 20 minutes to get there. Sorry.
But you painted a very positive picture of the whole assessment process. I mean,
Well, without it, you
every.
can't move up. Without it,
No,
you can't develop
I
your
get
career.
that,
So you have to learn to work with it.
but is every assessor being like that?
No, I've walked off of games where I've gone, that assessor has watched a completely different game to the game
Yeah.
that I've refereed. I've got the reports and I've gone, that didn't even happen. What is like? How can I? And that happens, and you can't say it doesn't. It just does. That's that. What can you do about it? And it is what it is. I mean, you could write a complaint, or you could say to your county FA, I'm not sure about this. Will it go against me? Or what would be better is go, look, like if I was in the UK, and I think I did do this once or twice, I got the report in. I remember one of my key assessments. It was my final assessment I needed to go from level 5 to 4. And in order to do that, you have to have, I think it was something like 4 on your own, and then you get one assessment with official linesmen, right? With actual linesmen. So in order for me, because I progressed through so quickly, in order for me to get those linesmen and to be assessed on a game with those linesmen, I had to step up like 2 leagues of the level I was officiating in. And so, and then this was my final assessment I had to get done in order to get my promotion. And it was at Hanningfield's farm in Billericay. Teams I'd come across before, but I'd never refereed before, I don't think, if I remember rightly. And I'd never worked with assistants before, ever. They had flags, they were proper, they were real. The assessor comes in, he listens to my pre-match brief. I don't know what I'm saying to him, really. I've not been in this situation much. I'm kind of making it up on the hoof a little bit, just hoping I get through, because I really want to become a level 4 referee. And then I'd do that, we'd get through that, I'd do the game. He was like, you missed this offside, you missed that offside, etc., all the rest of it. I just about got the mark I needed. On we go. And like I remember talking to the RDO at the time of Essex County FA, and I was like, mate, it's the first time I've ever worked with those guys. Like, if this brings me down, it's going to suck, because I've never done a game like that. And it's hardly like, it's not an adequate situation when there's that much pressure on me anyway. And then suddenly I'm dealing with a whole entire different game because I've got 2 assistants. And assistants do help, but they do change the way you run a game. And And, you know, and it was just one of those horrible situations that I managed to just get through. And you get through, you dust yourself down, and on you go. These things happen because it's not a perfect system. And you just have to appreciate that. And just, you know, like with anything, don't get angry. Just enjoy the process. Respect sometimes it's not going to go well. I missed out on promotion from level 4 to 3 based on a terrible assessment. It was a terrible assessment. The game in itself was terrible, but the assessor was not watching the game I was watching or I was reffing. And, you know, I remember once I was going to give a guy a card. I really thought about it. I thought about it. I thought about it. I thought about it. I then didn't. And he went, "You had your book in your hand. Why didn't you give him the card?" I went, "Because I changed my mind." He went, "You can't do that." And I was like, "No, I can. I hadn't restarted play. I have every right to not. I didn't give the card. Like I was just thinking about it. The book was in my hand. I thought about it. I gave myself time. The player was down. He was injured. I considered booking him, and then I didn't do it, and I just didn't think it warranted it. My instinct was wrong, and I thought my way through it. And then in the report, he went, "You failed to book that player, even though you said you was going to. You're not allowed to change your mind. That's it." And I was like, "Well, that's not right." And that assessment, I got injured that game. It was basically the game I decided to retire. Didn't get my promotion, and yeah, I got injured. I was training for the marathon at the time, and I was just done with refereeing. And it's sad when that happens, and it can happen, but you know, you live and learn, you move on. It was just a bad assessor, and everyone knew he was a bad assessor as well, and that doesn't help, because that, you know, like you're up against it. And level 4 to level 3, it is a bit of a difficult system like that, and I don't have that here. So again, I just have complete freedom, and I'll just let the observers watch me and appreciate who I am. I mean, I'm quirky here in Australia. I'm very quirky as a referee, and observers will either like that or they won't. Hey ho, I'll move on. I enjoy what I'm doing.
Now, what are we going to do here, Adam? Because
I
we're
don't know. I
we're
know
over
we've
an hour
ranted and then
into
some, haven't
we're
we?
into an hour into the podcast by chewing the card over only 2 topics so far. We haven't touched the law. We've done 1 question for the post bag.
We've done 2 questions, have we?
Um,
Should we do one more question from the post bag and then we'll get onto the law next week?
Oh yes, I agree. I think that we can. I think we're
Yeah,
going to
I
skip
think
one
we're
this week.
past
But yeah,
covering fouls and misconduct again.
I agree. So, which question would you like from our list of questions we're trying to work our way through?
I quite liked. Oh, where is it there? What is? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think I quite like Trevor's
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Yeah,
question
we'll go
because
with
it's
Trevor's.
kind of
And it's
like
been in for a while, isn't it?
it's been there for a while, and also it's kind of like a little bit connected to sort of what we're talking about today, which is sort of people's behaviour on the pitch, off the ball. So Trevor says, talks about an experience he had where both captains came up for the coin toss, and one of them, he says, has blown his nose on his shirt.
It's such a grassroots problem, isn't it?
It's such a grassroots problem.
Can't even
It's
afford a
just
tissue.
it's just so hideous as well. But you can you know, anyone that's referee grassroots football can kind of easily visualize this.
On that point, have you ever had a player like go to spit on the floor and you're like almost running past them and it almost hits your boot or something like that?
I'd be keeping up with the pace of play.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry. For that to happen, you have to get out of the centre circle, don't
It would have to be a very strong wind for me to be caught by that.
It's horrible. It is horrible.
No,
I'm like,
I mean,
watch it.
I
Like
hate
that's
it.
really close. One thing I would say though is I've noticed an awful lot less spitting on the pitch compared to like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, an awful lot less. I don't know if it's a England thing versus Australia, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Anyway, so he says
captains have blown their noses.
One of the captains has blown his nose in his shirt, so there's obvious mucus all over his chest, right? and his assessment is that he's done it deliberately to kind of psychologically gross out the opponent. And so he asked the question, "What do you do?" And I think this is a really good question because it's something you can, as I say, imagine happening.
He's gone on to say, isn't he, the way I see it, there are bodily fluids on his shirt and it needs to be cleaned up or the shirt replaced. Would you make an example of him and send him away to attend to it and toss the coin with another of his team and start the game, or bring him back in? Thoughts? Go on, Ed. What would you do?
So I think if you have formed the view, it's a deliberate action that's been done, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the motivation's irrelevant. So let's forget about the
Yeah, I
motivation for a
was going to
moment.
say, can you
But
demand whether it's deliberate or not? I don't.
but
You
if a
can't.
player turns up with mucus all over their chest, I think you're perfectly entitled to say they've got to go clean that up. I mean, it's unrealistic to say change his shirt because this is not sort of the Premier League and they'll bring out one of the sort of dozens of spares. That's
Mm,
not going to happen. But I think you're perfectly entitled to say that's got to be removed before you play any part in the game.
mm,
And you send them off, send them away from the pitch to go and sort that out. And I think you're perfectly entitled at that stage because the reality is it's going to involve a trip back to the dressing room. So it's not going to be. You might be able to resolve it by the pitch side by getting
spray a bit of water on it or
putting
something.
some water on him or
Mm.
wiping off.
Get the
But
magic sponge out.
yeah, I think you're perfectly entitled to say no off the pitch. I don't want that on. I don't want any fluids on your chest at all.
Mm,
And I think, as he said in his question, you can then. There's no reason why you need to wait for that person to come back. You just get
mm,
another player involved and crack on until that other
mm,
player's ready to come back on. Um, and actually, I think as I'm talking through it and saying it, I don't think motive is actually relevant at all here. I mean, I
mm.
think you
I
take the
agree.
same stance, don't you? Regardless whether you think it's been a deliberate
Mm,
psychological act or whether it's
yep.
just somebody that's just sort of got a cold.
Yeah. I had a player, I mean, similar. I had a player on Wednesday, his right boot was not safe. Like it was splitting, it was apart. I looked at it, I went, no chance, mate. No chance. I went, you got spare boots? He went, no. I went, okay, well, you gotta go find some. Sent him off the pitch and told him to replace his boot. And he put on a different right boot and it was fine. And then he played the game. I think with this, I think it's a great moment for you to show control and for you
Yeah.
to draw a line in the sand and go, no, I'm sorry. That is not acceptable on this field. And as long as you do it with respect, you can even do it as a bit of a joke, like make a bit of like fun out of it. You don't have to be a school teacher or a policeman in this situation. But I think it's a good moment for you at the very start of the game to set your stall out and get a bit of respect and be like, no, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go and clean it up. And you go, oh, it's only snot. I'm like, yeah, and I think it's disgusting. Now go and clean it up. And then you can either wait for him or you can call over a vice captain. It's not going to take him long to sort it out, really, is it? He's just got to get the sponge or get a bit of water and spray it down. It wouldn't take long. But suddenly that captain goes, oh, okay, he's a bit of a stickler, this guy, but then it might strip them up in the game. And
I
I don't
agree
see
with
any
that.
problem with that. I think a wider point in terms of the laws, I don't think there's anything you can do about it's not on a t-shirt, in all honesty. I think as a personal thing, you could be, it's disgusting. I don't want to see it. I don't want it. What if I run into you? I don't want that on my shirt. Thank you very much. But it's not blood, and blood is the thing that in the laws of the game, you do
Yeah,
have to
what I
get
want to
fixed.
I want to come back and pose a question about that, but I suppose it's if it has been deliberate, I mean, then it's issues about it being unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yeah,
So
there is, but you
it
can't
is
you can't
something.
tell whether it's deliberate. Can you? How
No,
do you determine whether someone blowing their nose on their shirt is deliberately trying to gain a psychological advantage over an
no,
opponent?
not so much as I mean, there could be no logical explanation as to why you blow your nose in your shirt, though. Really, is there? I mean,
Well, other
you
than the fact he didn't want to, like, you see how some players like hold one nostril and blow their nose and just let it
yeah,
fly on the floor. I think it's better than that, to be honest. But look, also in the world of COVID, right, or post-COVID world that we are in, I think you have every right to say, can we just be a bit more hygienic, please? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're
so
all
so we
gentlemen here. Let's treat each other with some greater respect.
we're totally agreeing about that, which is novel for this evening's podcast. But the another topic which you just mentioned, I think is slightly difficult. So the issue of blood,
Odd,
right? So we
yeah.
we we know we know what the law says about it.
Oh,
Okay,
it's hard,
you
isn't it?
can't, but this is a real problem where you're refereeing grassroots as opposed to the Premier League because
Yeah, it
as
really
we've just
is.
said, the Premier League, you just take your shirt off and replace it with another shirt, right? It's not a problem. But at grassroots, the reality is that there's probably not going to be a spare shirt, or if you make them change a shirt, they're going to have to take it off a substitute going to come on with a number that's either been on the pitch already or somebody wants to come on. So how strict? I mean, for me, I mean, I have to admit, I struggle. Obviously, you don't want players running around the pitch with blood on their shirts as a general rule, right? But in terms of sort of the risk or threat it poses to people, right? I mean, I find it difficult to conceive of an argument which suggests that having someone on the pitch who's got dry blood on their shirt poses a risk really to anybody. I mean, unless somebody sort of just decides to go and suck someone else's shirt collar that's like stained with blood.
That'd be the same guy who's blown his nose on the shirt, or
Probably. But I mean, but what is the? I mean, what's the rationale behind
yeah,
it?
I know. I mean, like if there's a cut, it has to be stopped. You can't have fresh blood bleeding.
I get that.
Which is, and players hate it when you ask them to do that. Blood on the shirt. But I mean, it's difficult at my level. I know I can demand it.
Yeah.
And it's the club's fault if they can't. At the end of the day, it's the club's fault if they don't have the spare shirt. I appreciate, but that is a difficult thing for you to manage. I think I suppose it's a judgment call. I think if they've washed the blood off the shirt and it's clearly just a little stain, it's your call in your moment. I can't say one way or the other. The law says it has to be sorted at the end of the day, and that's it. It's a difficult one, and I think every situation is unique.
I suspect lots of people get confronted with that at grassroots, where you've got a sort of player who's got a bit of
players hate it. You say you're going to have to go off because I need you to fix that blood. They hate it. And then 9 times out of 10, they have to go off 2 or 3 times before they've actually fixed the problem because they don't know how to fix it because they're not physios. It's real difficult. I mean, they hated me telling him to fix his boot the other night, but there's no way you could play in it. And then when the bench actually looked at it, they were like, oh yeah, you're probably right there. Even like jewelry and stuff like that, you know. I know. Right. I think we better call it a day there.
So
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say the not discussing a law on the Cities podcast probably gives people a sort of an idea as to what this podcast might look like in a few weeks' time when we run out of the law.
Few weeks. Well, yeah, exactly right. It's a preview into our future selves, which is always nice.
Is. And so for those people that haven't yet given us a review, please do give us a review, and be interested to get your feedback because some of you might be very upset we haven't touched upon the law this week. Some of you may be very, very happy. And
the other thing needs to be said is you're saved by the bell because you haven't prepared for this week. No, I've read the law.
Well, I had read the entirety of the law for the last one, which we then end up dividing in 2. And I had also prepared fun facts for the last one as well, which I didn't use them all up last time expressly to keep some of them for this week.
People are going to be most disappointed they don't get to hear my jingle. Well, that is in time with the music. Thank you.
I think they're probably more disappointed not to get my fun facts. But no, it'd be really good to get your feedback because I have to say, a lot of our feedback we've had has been mostly positive about our dealing with things like the post bag or talking about news items or just having general chats. So nice. I hope that not having a law dealt with hasn't ruined anybody's experience. But do let us know. It'd be interesting to know whether how important the law aspect is. But we will get back to the law. We promised to deal with indirect free kicks on the next one. We'll maybe cut short our news and post bag to make sure we finish off law number 11.
No, 12. 12. Is it? 12. Fouls and misconduct. Let me check. I've got it open because I was working on it. Law 12, fouls and misconduct. We have to go through disciplinary action.
We will get back to finishing off on the next occasion, and I will finish my fun facts, which I prepared for fouls and misconduct. But yeah, it's late here. I'm up tomorrow morning to go and do my volunteering.
Oh yeah, of course, that's right. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I've got a game tonight, Southwest Queensland Thunder versus Logan Lightning, and I had Logan 2 weeks ago, so that should be good. Hopefully I'll have a quieter game.
Those sort of names that you'd find in a sort of LGBTQ plus league. We all go for things like Thunder and Lightning, and
it's funny because they both come out to the same theme tune as well, which is what is it, Guns N' Roses? You know that Thunder, that song. They both have the same theme tune.
Isn't that Metallica or something?
Is it, or AC/DC? One of them, I don't know.
Something like
so yeah.
So hold on, they come out to theme tunes?
Yeah. Oh mate, it's like franchise football here. It's great. The club setups are really good here. It has to be said, they're so good, and the clubs are all pretty much very, very lovely to work with and deal with. It's been a testing week for me on the fields, red cards and dogzos and penalty decisions and dissent and cup matches and overtimes and mascons. It's I've had a big week of big decisions, but those are good weeks because you know it's nice to be tested sometimes and just to know that you've still got it in your bag.
And my favourite bit about watching the highlights of your games, Adam, are watching the goal scorers go and celebrate behind the goal with a group of like 8 school kids that have come down to watch, and they're loving it. They're so happy. It's very sweet watching that.
That was
Very,
actually
very cool.
that was actually a very that's the kid who scored that goal. He came on. He came on like in the 80th minute and scored the first goal and was like, whoa. And he normally plays for the under-23s team, which is like the reserve team, right? And then he scored the second goal. He scored 2 goals that basically sealed the game for him. And then on Monday morning, I'm in the gym working, and his mum, I didn't notice at the time, but his mum and his sister walk in, and she goes, "Oh, I saw you last night. You was refereeing my son." I was like, "Who's your son?" She was like, "The guy who scored 2 goals." I was like, "No way, that was amazing." So that was a nice moment. The joys of living in a small city. But yeah, no, look, yeah, all the highlights of all my games are on YouTube.
I know you need to start sharing them with our listeners so that
My game,
people can have a little watch.
My game tonight will be live on YouTube as well. If you want to wake up at 3 a.m. and watch it, it's at 6 p.m. here. Yeah, you get to see me run around. So that's fun.
I'm not getting up at 3 o'clock in the
No,
morning.
I wouldn't expect you to watch a game on YouTube. No,
as much as I love you, that is
short.
simply not happening.
Absolutely
anyway,
right.
Don't forget, people, about our 10% discounts in the referee websites, both here and in Australia. They're all in the show notes. All the details you need to get your 10% discount.
So if you need any equipment, go do that.
And I think that's about it for this week. Yeah. Lovely to see you, Adam.
Likewise, mate. I'm sure you've had a big week.
With your game.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for being here. It means an awful lot. Thanks for the luck with my game as well. That's really delightful.
And I look forward to chatting to you next week.
Can't wait.
Take care.
Have a wonderful week. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Red or Yellow. You're clearly a very fit listener. May I gently remind you to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell all your friends. And don't forget to please share it with any colleagues or refereeing groups that you may have. Good luck on the fields out there this week. And if you have any questions, please send them in to us. Voice notes can be sent to redorYellowpod@gmail.com, or you can contact us on social media. It's @redorYellowpod. Have the most wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao, ciao.